LP like Paul.
Yeah.
Miles College. Yeah.
Them Golden Bears. MC, 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 MC.
We finna get it in.
MC, 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 MC.
Look here.
Purple over here, gold over there. Yeah, we rapping Miles College, we them Golden Bears. Purple over here, gold over there. Yeah, we rapping Miles College, we them Golden Bears. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Yeah, gold all in my chain, yeah, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. We screaming dirty MC, we turned the ball not turf. Miles College, we them Golden Bears. Who we finna play? We don't even care. PMM crank the band up and light the fuse. Not a crowd jumping, oh your team bout to lose. I rep it hard, everybody know. You gon' see me representing that purple and gold. We finna get it in, we finna get a win. Everybody turned up, yeah we on 10. Lord have mercy, making history. You don't wanna run up, I got my clique with me. Purple over here, gold over there. Yeah, we reppin' Miles College, we them Golden Bears. Purple over here, gold over there. Yeah, we reppin' Miles College, we them Golden Bears. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt. Gold all in my chain, purple all in my shirt.
Yeah. Okay. This that dirty MC. Miles College. Okay. We all we got. We all we need. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I love my HBCU. The dirty MC.
Since 1898, the concept of higher learning for African Americans has thrived and flourished here in the metropolitan Birmingham, Alabama. Miles College is a senior private liberal arts historically black college with roots in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church that motivates and prepares students to seek knowledge which leads to intellectual and civic empowerment. The Miles College education engages students in rigorous study, scholarly inquiry, and spiritual awareness, enabling graduates to become lifelong learners and responsible citizens who help shape our global society. Through its coursework, community development projects, and philanthropic partnerships, Miles College students graduate with the knowledge and wisdom needed to reach their full potential and thrive in a shifting 21st century landscape. Learn more today about Miles College. To donate, learn more about course information, or to schedule a visit, go to miles.edu.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Miles College's College Forum in Chapel. I am Dean Leon Parker, and of course, we have with us the Dean of Student Life Engagement in Chapel, the Reverend Larry Beatty. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning, Dean Parker. How are you today?
I'm excited and extra black, particularly because we are in the midst of Black History Month, celebrating our history, celebrating our heritage. And indeed, it feels great to be here on the campus of Miles College, a place where history abides, more so particularly during the Civil Rights Movement and even making history as of even yesterday. So indeed, it is a great day on the campus of Miles College.
It certainly is. And I want to say it's been a thrill and joy for me to walk these hallowed grounds and to share in this rich legacy and history of Miles College, and not only in civil rights, but in educating Black students in America as well as in Alabama. We have a rich history, and we are Black history.
Absolutely. And
I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share. And I know you have some exciting things that we're going to be sharing and talking about today, especially our social involvement of the college. during the civil rights era and on and beyond. Even before, many people like to talk about us in the civil rights, but can you imagine in 1898, recently removed from slavery, that black men and women had a mindset. Listen to hear what I'm saying. Had a mindset thinking futuristic, that they're going to educate. They may not be able to do it themselves, but they were going to educate generations to come. And they came together and formed the Miles College. Of course, it wasn't Miles College at that particular time, but what developed into Miles College, but educating the future generation. 1898.
Wow.
I don't know how people, I don't know where they understand the significance of that. In 1898.
Over 124 years.
And people who were undereducated or had no education, but thought educationally. Now that's significant to me. How powerful is that? God had to be working through our people to form these schools, not only Miles, but schools all over the nation, thinking that one day their children would be able to participate in the educational process.
Absolutely. And so, Dean, as we fast forward 124 years later, as of yesterday, Miles College has made history again as FedEx announced its partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities. And in that number was Miles College. And so on yesterday, we saw President Knight along with other HBCU presidents, including the president of our sister school, Lane College, Dr. Logan Hampton, ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange yesterday. And with her, we had one of our students who participated. His name is Jairus Baker. He's a Miles College freshman, and he's on the golf team. I'm just going to share a clip from yesterday's event.
Certainly.
Please welcome executives and guests of FedEx in celebration of FedEx HBCU Student Ambassador Program. To honor the occasion, they'll be ringing the closing bell.
Listen to you. I don't know about you, but I felt so good just to see, number one, people that I knew. I knew the president of Tennessee State University, Dr. Glover. I knew our president, Bobby Knight. I knew Dr. Just to see people we knew ring the bell at 3 p.m. At the New York Stock Exchange yesterday, it brought joy to my heart just to see the advancements that we have made and we continue to make as a people. And we also just want to give a shout out to that young man, Brother Jairus Baker, who will be one of our student representatives and one who participated yesterday in the closing bell ringing ceremony as well. And just to see some more pictures, I mean, I don't know about you, Dean, but I've never seen Miles College name down at the stock exchange. Have you?
No, I haven't, but I say that that's a significant move. And I think it's very important because we got to understand that we live in a capitalistic society.
Absolutely.
And those who control the capital in the society always also determine the nature of the society itself. So it's very important that we understand capitalism. If you're going to be a part of a capitalist society, you must understand capitalism. And that's the heart of capitalism right there on Wall Street. And it's nothing new to the Black community because we could go back to Oklahoma, of course, in history where they had the Black Wall Street. So it's nothing new. And I can remember growing up in Birmingham myself, 4th and 5th Avenue. 4th and 5th Avenue were areas where you had all the Black businesses, professional people on 4th and 5th Avenue in downtown Birmingham. So, and I can certainly remember Dr. A.G. Gaston.
Yes. Was he your mentor?
Oh, yes, sir. I remember him very well because he hired me right out of college. He hired me. I graduated in May. The next week, I was working for Dr. A.G. Gaston in his insurance business. So I owe him a debt of gratitude for those words he gave. Part of all you earn is yours to keep. Those were his words. A part of all you earn is yours to keep. That stuck with me. So I've been saving a part of mine, everything I earned over the years. So that's a wonderful thing, and we need to understand. So I'm excited about the opportunity to our young people to be exposed to Wall Street.
Absolutely, absolutely. When we return, we are going to talk about the role of Miles College students during the Civil Rights Movement. But before we get into that, certainly we want to pause and lift up the National Negro Anthem entitled "Lift Every Voice and Sing." And this particular rendition was done last year in the midst of the pandemic. And so you will witness over 105 voices of historically Black colleges and university students from across the country sharing in their virtual version of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
My. Man, when I hear time, I hear that the little hair I have on my head stands up.
I tell you, one of the most powerful moments for me is hearing it in Brown Hall's auditorium, knowing the history of that auditorium, the history of our church, the history of the civil rights movement as it relates to Birmingham being in the 60s, to hear the pipe organ being played at that time. I don't know about you, but I don't have any hair, but I feel the ancestors. I tell you that much. I feel the ancestors, and I feel just a sense of calm, of rigor, and fight as it relates to our people. And so, with that being said, certainly we want to continue the conversation as we celebrate and kick off Black History Month here on the campus of Miles College. Certainly, we just want to keep you all involved there. There are going to be activities throughout the entire month. On next week, we are excited to have former president, the Reverend Dr. W. Clyde Williams. He served as president of Miles College from 1971 to 1986. And he will be on next week sharing with us his experience here at the college and how he had to leverage relationships and partnerships after this movement to keep Miles College afloat. And he did it successfully for 15 years. And so we're excited that he will be sharing with us. And also look out that there's going to be some other surprises coming your way. You'll see announcements on campus, but we want to encourage you to participate and be involved during this month's Black History Month celebration. And we also want to give a special shout out to Dr. Olivia Cook. Dr. Olivia Cook will be helping coordinate these events, and certainly we thank God for her. She comes on new to the Miles College family as she's over social and economic justice center here that we've recently established here at the college.
I tell you what, I'm excited to hear Dr. Williams because Dr. Williams was my president. He was the president of the college when I was a student here at Miles College. So I have some fond memories of his administration here. So I'm excited to hear him next week. But when we talk about civil rights and talk about the Miles College, you can't take away from the activity of the CME Church as well.
Correct.
The CME Church was deeply involved in the civil rights movement here in Birmingham, because we can't talk about it in Birmingham without talking about Dr. L.L. Love Welcher. Dr. Love
Henry Welcher, that's right.
Yeah, Love Henry Welcher. You can't talk who pastored the Metropolitan Church here in Inslee during those turbulent times. Great scholar, historian. He has some nice books out. I would recommend to students to read some of his material and get a kind of capture of what happened in the church, how the church evolved during this period as well, historically as well. So you can't talk about it without talking about the CME Church as well, Dean Parker.
Well, I appreciate his writings. I had an opportunity for him to be my African-American history teacher at the ITC in Atlanta, Georgia. And certainly we used several of his writings. One, Hell Without Fire. And then the other book was The History and the Heritage of African-American Churches, A Way Out of No Way. And when I tell you his writings and his contribution to our history is something that is magnanimous and something everyone should invest in. Those two books, Hell Without Fire, as well as A Way Without No Way, you will be enlightened, but also invigorated and encouraged to want to do more, to want to speak truth to power. And that's what our ancestors and that's what our people are even still doing today, which is why we wanted to share, particularly as our Miles College leaders and students were active during the civil rights era. We want to just share with our students that you too have the same capacity to go and to fight, to go and to do those things that brings forth justice and love, not just for a group of people, for all people. And so what I want to do is I want to show a video that highlights our college, highlights our students during the 60s. And during that time, I believe Dr. Lucius Pitts was the president during that time.
Before members of the SCLC ever came to Birmingham back in the 60s, students at Miles College in Fairfield were already involved in protest and boycotts.
Ashley Roberts shows us how those students use their voices to affect change as Alabama's 13 continues to celebrate Black History Month.
Founded in 1898, Miles College has a rich history. Students found themselves in the middle of the civil rights movement. The reason they fought for change? Priceless. A burning desire to break down racial barriers.
Well, we decided that we were going to take some action, nonviolent action. Hello there, hello there.
52 years ago, former Miles College students Reverend Frank Dukes and Armand Bragg shared a jail cell, now sharing a handshake.
You not only talk the talk, but you walk the walk. We could have gotten killed for what we were doing, but we didn't care.
They only cared about changing their community into a place where everyone was treated equally. Reverend Dukes led the mission.
If a man asks me a question, I can speak for myself because I would not be economically depressed because I'm already economically depressed.
He went to the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce and told them he's doing a project for a school. And he wanted to know what impact the African American community had upon downtown businesses.
Turns out it was 25%. A boycott was born. Black students refused to buy from businesses that discriminated against them. Since boycotts were illegal, they used another name, the Selective Buying Campaign.
The campaign was so successful that they caused downtown stores to lose over $4 million per week. And that was in the early 1960s.
They also arranged sit-ins, going to businesses and sitting in areas designated for whites only.
And we just sat there at the counter, and the lady kept telling us we need to go down to the colored section. And certainly we refused to move, and shortly after then we were arrested.
Their efforts led to Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth convincing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to bring the civil rights movement to Birmingham.
He just had this way of really moving people. Every speech he gave moved you.
A time that taught students patience, persistence.
Rather than class clown now, I'm looking at folks who pat me on the back and treat me almost like a hero because I was one of the first from Miles to actually do the demonstration.
It feels good to go in the store now and know you can shop on any floor without regardless of race, creed, or color.
Color, finally non-existent. The sky, no longer the limit. Miles College students reaching new heights, fighting for civil rights. Their light still shining bright. About a year ago, I began working at Miles College in the communications department. Every time I step foot on campus, it's as if I'm taking a step back in time, remembering, recognizing, and appreciating the steps taken before me for civil rights.
Ashley Roberts.
What a rich history, what a rich legacy we have. And I tell students, and you heard it too, you heard it when you came, when you walk across these grounds, I mean, you're walking around across hollowed ground.
Yeah.
I tell students that all the time. And if we don't tell our story, nobody's going to tell the story for us. Long before SCLC came to town, Miles was very active in the movement and helping to bring about change. And the legacy continues, and it has not stopped. We're doing it now by educating minds and training leaders to go out and make a difference, like yourself, leaders like yourself and others who are going out making a difference in the world. So we're still transforming the country. It's transforming our nation through producing leaders now who have a social consciousness.
Absolutely.
You can't come to this place and leave the same. When you come to these places and walk across these hallowed grounds and survey this rich history and legacy, you can't help but to be affected by the atmosphere here.
So true, Dean. As we talk about movements, as we talk about making change and bringing forth justice, and also as we, as a church who believes in Christ and the Word of God, what are some scriptures that you would use in moments like these to encourage? I know for me, what comes to mind is Isaiah 1:17, that we're to learn to do good, right? To seek justice, to reprove the ruthless, to defend the orphan, and to plead for the widow. I believe that that is a call to action for all of those who truly, in the form of John Wesley, who would want to do good, right? Would not want to do harm to anybody, and who would want to stay in love with God. In the Methodist Church, we call them those 3 simple rules. But those 3 simple rules are so powerful in that it speaks towards the safety and the protection of not just the individual subgroup, but for everyone. And when we look at the Word of God, I'm convinced the kind of God that we serve is not a God of race, of sex. He is not a God who separates those things. He's not a God who separates people based upon that socioeconomic background, but he is a God, as Frank Duke said in the video, who wants everyone to be treated fairly and to be treated equally. And so for you, Dean, what would be some words or scriptures that you would use to encourage students and to encourage others to push forward in doing what is right and bringing forth justice and liberty, particularly for us as African Americans, but for everyone?
I think, first of all, for me, God can relate to me because God is Black. Far as I'm concerned, God is Black. And when you hear, when I say that, people get disturbed. Well, God has no color. Well, I mean, then, and I remember I was in a think tank in St. Louis. They call what they call prominent pastors together in a think tank. And you have to have a certain degrees and all that. And they invited me to become a part of it. And it was my time to do a sermon. And I did a sermon the title of the sermon was, "What Color is God?" And I concluded for me that God was Black. And and that Jesus was Black. And one of the eminent scholars there said to me, Jesus is colorless. I said, okay. I said, then why I knew his church. I said, why in your church do you have this picture of Jesus as a white man with blonde hair?
Uh-oh.
He said, well, because people can relate. I said, you're a scholar. You know that that's not Jesus and that's not how Jesus looked, but yet you perpetuate that picture in your church. I said, well, if God is colorless, take it down and put a Black Jesus up there. He said, oh, no, I can't do that. I said, why you can't do that? Because my people would be. I said, well, then God, color matters then to people. It matters to your people. If your God can be white, why can't my God be Black? And the room went silent. And of course, I can tell you, I was never invited back to be a part of that think tank again. And it doesn't matter to me. I said that in the sense that God is also whoever the people are that are depressed, oppressed, on the boundaries, marginalized. God is there, and God can relate to those people. So God become marginalized. He becomes on the boundary. He becomes poor. He becomes depressed. He becomes oppressed, because God is all of that when it comes to his people. How do I know that? Look what Proverbs says to us. Proverbs 31:8-9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. God becomes poor folks when necessary to become poor. God becomes black when necessary to become black. And gets in, and I take the story of the fiery furnace when the Hebrew boys whose names were changed. They changed those boys' names and gave them Babylonian names, and those names represented various gods.
That's right.
And when they threw them in the furnace, God became one of them and got in the furnace with them. God gets in the poverty with the poor and do what needs to be done to deliver them. God becomes black when it's necessary to become black and delivers us. So for me, and I say symbols are powerful. Riggins Earl wrote a book about that. I can't remember the title.
Dark signs and something symbols. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, wrote a book about that. Symbols are powerful. Let me show you how powerful symbols are. If you get a child and you raise them up looking at a white Jesus with a blonde hair,
that's right.
It impregnates in that mind of that child that God is white, blonde hair. If you go to China, you're going to see a Chinese God. In Africa, until the Greeks and the Spaniards and others came, God was related to the folks who were of that region until they changed things, cut off the noses and all that kind of stuff So why do folks get bent out of shape when we see God as black, but it's all right to see him as white?
So it's almost like Dean Howard Thurman says that we serve a God who meets us where we are.
Exactly.
It's almost like the God that we serve takes upon the pain, takes upon the sin. The correlation right there between God sending his son Jesus to the world was to take upon the sins of the world. So it's almost like the God of our Christian faith is a God that takes on what his people is dealing with, whether it's race, color, famine, whatever it is, he takes it on to embody it, to number one, embody it, but number two, to let people know that the God that we serve is an Emmanuel God who will see us through. Emmanuel meaning God is with us, and who will deliver us from the ruthless, who will defend the orphan, who will plead for the widow, and as we saw in Proverbs 31, 8 and 9, who will speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Throughout Jesus's ministry, he spoke truth to power, and he spoke up for the downtrodden. He spoke up for those who were considered the least. And really, that's encouragement for us today. When we look at our communities, even in our families, we see that we are suffering, and the word teaches us that the strong must bear the infirmities of the weak. And so we have to speak up, and we have to do those things. That's why I love to see young people peacefully marching in the streets for causes of justice. That's why I love students and young people and people in general organizing for a cause that brings forth something better for those who are in need. So speak up, as Proverbs 31, 8 and 9 says. Judge fairly and defend the rights of the poor and those who are in need.
And Deuteronomy 16 and 20 says, follow justice and justice alone, so that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. See, if you want to possess the land, you want to do, you must, we are charged, let me use that word, to do the right thing. We are charged to seek out justice. You can't be a Christian, in my perspective, and sit around and tolerate things as they are when you know that they are wrong. You can't be a Christian and sit around and act like things are right when you know that they are wrong. God has charged us to be his voice. We must therefore speak against injustice.
Yeah.
We must therefore stand against those things that are wrong. We must stand for the poor. We must look out for those who are downtrodden. We must look out for those who are marginalized. We are compelled to do that. And let me say this. This is a pet peeve of mine. You can't tell me it's all right to worship your white God, but it's wrong for me to worship my black God. You want me to worship your statue of Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes, when it's quite contrary to what the Bible's description of him, of course. And we know also for the region that he came from that wouldn't be true.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up.
So now you come telling me, don't talk about a black God. He all of a sudden he become colorless when I say he's black. But as long as we were worshiping this blonde hair, blue eyed boy, it was all right. But now it becomes something evil. See, that's what bothers me. And I like James Cone and all of those boys, but I was thinking that when I was a youngster, why did God always have to be depicted as white? That's a symbol. And as I said to you, symbols are powerful. You imagine your son and your daughter going to church every Sunday, praising a white God, and going out into the world seeing white people. That somehow impregnates in their mind that they are superior. So they see themselves as inferior because God is white, so they must be a higher class of people. We must get out of that. If God's going to be colorless, then he can be depicted as black, brown, yellow, as well as your white boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. I said that to my grandmother one time. And of course, I had to leave that alone because she wouldn't let me take that Jesus picture off the wall.
That's right.
She had Kennedy, King, and Jesus. And I told her, I said, I don't have any problem with King. I have a few problems with Kennedy, but I have a lot of problem with that Jesus you got up there. And Grandmama said, and of course, Grandmama said, you call yourself a preacher. You talking about Jesus. Well, I knew I wasn't going to convert her, but that's after I got introduced to James Cone and all them boys in college, here at Miles College. Matter of fact, it was Dr. Albert Sloan that introduced me to this idea. And I took it on, of course, it's on the seminary and everywhere else. But here's the point I'm trying to make to our young people. You must think for yourselves. You must think for yourselves. You can't just accept everything that's being told to you. I think Carter G. Woodson was right when he talked about the miseducation of the Negro, or whatever that book was called, Miseducation of the Negro, was right. That you must learn to think for yourselves and not be afraid to challenge the things that you have been taught. I tell students that all the time. You can think outside of the box. You don't have to accept the things that people are telling you or the things you read in books. You understand that sometimes people have agendas and they write material and things in order to perpetuate their own agendas. And many times when we go through this educational system in the schools, you know for yourself, Dean Parker, how many of our kids come with a knowledge of Langston Hughes, Ralph Ellison, and all of those black writers coming out of high school? Not many. And that's a tragedy. But yet we said that we are educating. No, we are trying to assimilate people into a certain mindset. And I'm saying, when you come here, we challenge you to think.
To think, yeah.
To think. And think outside of the box. And you don't have to accept the status quo. Let me stop, man.
Well, that's good. That's good, because when we look at the theme for Black History Month for Miles College, that the time is now, right? And the time is now to do a lot of things, but that the purpose of that is to learn how we as a people can be intentional about our efforts and affect positive change regardless of where we are. And I think the only way for us to move forward in that effort is to, first of all, pause and bring forth the spirit of Sankofa, recognizing where we've come from as a people while carrying ourselves into the future. And so for those of you who don't know what Sankofa is, it's actually the symbol used for that is a bird. This bird is looking back with an egg in his mouth, which represents the future, but he's walking forward. But his head is turned backwards because it is with the thought that he must recognize where he has come from. He must teach the children, teach the younger generation, which is what that egg represents, while moving forward. And so if we're going to continue to do the work of our ancestors, if we're going to continue to be more impactful and meaningful in the work that we do as individuals, but even as a collective community, colleges, universities, churches, what have you, we must instill in our young people our rich heritage and legacy and encourage them and challenge them to do bigger, bolder, and better things. You know, I was just looking at some of the pictures. I don't think these pictures have not been released, but these are some pictures. They're called contact sheets, Dean Beatty. And these are some pictures that really have not gone out into the public. But we want to thank Mr. Tony Bingham in our humanities department that shows actual footage of our students, Miles College students. And these pictures were taken by an FBI agent. He kept those pictures and later down the years released them. But you will see our students at the counters not being served. You'll see at the bottom gentleman there sitting by himself and a guy with something in his hand getting ready to pour on him. But these pictures just shows how strong and invigorated our college students were during that time and how effective the selective buying campaign was to have a 25% impact in the overall economic process in downtown Birmingham just by our black dollars is truly an amazing. And when we control our dollars, right?
Exactly. And think about this now, Dean Parker. All the money we say, well, college students don't have any money. Well, I see these sneakers and I see these shoes and I see these outfits that students have on. Oh, they got some money. What they haven't learned to do is to prioritize and see what's important. Look, think about this. All the money that young adults, black young adults spend in all of these places, what if they got a social consciousness and decided we're going to keep our money in our pockets until some things change and demand that some things change, or we're not going to spend our money in these particular stores? I'll give you one better than that, Dean Parker. What if all the churches in the state of Alabama decided we're only going to deal with those banks, put our money in those banks that are sensitive to the needs and the development of our communities.
That's true.
And we're going to pull all our money out. We're going to take it down there to Citizen Trust Bank, the black bank, and put it in there, and we're going to keep it there and not put it in any of your other banks until y'all invest. You know what kind of impact that would have? Absolutely. If the black churches, the black businesses said, we're going to only deal with Citizen Trust. And you know the leverage it would give Citizen Trust?
Absolutely.
The power that would have.
I mean, it's proven the leverage that was brought forth between the African American community in Birmingham after selective buying campaign. I mean, the sky was the limit. But what I want to do is, because I was talking to Dr. Williams, and he's going to share something that I did not know. It was because of our impact in the 60s that he was able in the 70s to go to those corporate entities and leverage the partnerships to save Miles College. So, that impact didn't just impact the community, it impacted our schools, our education, our economy. It reverberated throughout the entire community.
And what I get tired of this poor theology too. I don't believe in this materialistic gospel now, this materialistic gospel that we have today. But I don't believe you have to be poor either. I believe that you ought to be able to leverage your resources in order to make an impact in your communities. And another thing that as we talk about Black history, I talked to you earlier about 4th and 5th Avenue. I remember when we supported Black businesses because we didn't have any choice. We couldn't go anywhere else. We couldn't spend anywhere else and get treated like a human being anywhere else. So we supported our own. What if we did that now? What if we took our resources, leveraged our resources, and supported Black business and helped Black entrepreneurs to develop businesses in our own communities, build up our own communities instead of trying. Look, in an average Black community, all the businesses are owned by people who are not African American. You may have one mama and papa store in there somewhere, but they just about on the edge of going out of business because other people have come into the community and taken over, and we support them. I think about all the money that we spend on nails and weaves and all that. How much of that comes back to the Black? See, I'm talking some stuff now, man, that folks don't want to hear, man, but that's true. Just think about it. That's $1 billion industry, weaving. When one girl told me what she had to pay to get some false hair in her head, and I said, you got your own hair, and you're not proud of your own. See, that's part of that teaching. That's part of what we've been taught and impregnated in our minds, what beauty is. And we don't see ourselves beautiful unless we start looking like somebody else. And that's part of that teaching. That's part of what we were getting away from when we became into our own. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And now, and one of the reasons is because we don't control the media either. They dictate to us who we are. And we believe it, we buy into it, and we walk into it, and we spend our money accordingly, trying to look like somebody, hair all down our backs. And some people have nice curly hair.
Curly hair, yes, sir, Dean.
That they could be wearing naturally and looking beautiful, but instead they tie somebody else's hair all the way down their back to try to look like somebody else because you're not. You see, that's something about not really having a respect for yourself
and knowing who
you are.
That's right.
Because we're still looking at that white God, that white Jesus, and we always think that's superior. Don't get me started, Dean.
That's good, Dean. That's good. You know what? We got to come back to that. We've got to come back to that. we getting ready to wrap up, but I want to thank you for that insight. I want to thank you for that encouragement. And we're going to end a little bit differently today. I'm going to share some important announcements to our community, and then any final thoughts that you may have, Dean. And we're going to end with another short clip video as relates to.
Let me just give you a Job scripture before you go. Job 5:15 and 16. This is from the NIV version. Listen to what Job, the 5th chapter, 15 and 16 verse say. He saves the needy from the sword in their mouth. He saves them from the clutches of the powerful. So the poor have hope, and injustice shuts his mouth.
I just got to put that on the screen. Absolutely. Absolutely. We hope as we kicked off Black History Month here at Miles College that this session has blessed you. Our theme for this month is The Time Is Now. The time is now as African Americans to stand up and to rise. The time is now to start that business. The time is now to make a difference in your community, no matter how young or how old you may be. The time is now to establish a relationship with Jesus Christ, who is the liberator, who is the social justice person of all social justice issues, right? The time is now to go forward and to speak truth. The time is now to do what God has called you to do in this season. Before we close out, we just want to make mention to you, many of you have been asking about these iPads. Well, I have good news for you today, as we've promised to kick off the Miles College Mobile Life, which launches this spring. We want you to know on Friday, February 11th, iPad Pros and accessories will be distributed at Pearson Hall for all students. In order to be eligible to receive your device on February 11th, you will need to first complete a form. And I'm going to drop the form link into the comment section. But in order for you to come and pick up your iPad and its accessories, you need to fill out the form. You will have until Friday, February 4th at 6 p.m. to complete the form. This form has gone out in email blasts, so we want to make sure that you're also checking your email accounts. Please make sure that your mailing address is up to date in the Bears Den. And if you need help accessing the Bears Den, please call admissions at 205-929-1656. In addition to all of that, you must have your student ID to pick up your iPad and its accessories. Dean, before we leave, do you have any final thoughts for us? And then we're going to end with our last video clip for the day.
Yes, man, you got me started here today. But I want to close with Psalms 50:6 from the NIV version. And it reads, "In the heavens proclaim his righteousness, for he is a God of justice." Don't you forget that God is a God of justice, and he'll be with you if you fight for a just cause. God bless you.
Bull Connor then commanded the police department to come and escort us out of City Hall, and he told me to be out of town by sundown, and I was.
This is not a documentary to incite hatred. This is not a documentary to inflame or to anger. This is a documentary to spotlight truth.
All white folks ain't bad and all blackers ain't good. The selective buying campaign, I think, is the single most important event which led to the coming of Martin Luther King to Birmingham in the spring of 1963.
This is a documentary to promote tolerance and harmony.
Dr. Pitts was a genius at getting white folk and black folk together.
There is no more important educational institution in the country right now than Miles College.
This is a documentary to pay homage and celebrate men and women, blacks and whites, led by and buoyed by the irrepressible courage of Miles College students who sparked a movement that ultimately changed the world.
After about between 6 and 8 weeks, the merchants, Parisians, desegregated all their water fountains and toilets. And I believe that Lawmans desegregated all their water fountains and toilets.
And the success of that movement was remarkable. When it came time to choose sides, as it were, in the battle for human rights and dignity, I had to take a stand.
Hey, Miles College family, it's Dean Leon Parker, Dean of Student Life, Engagement, and Chapel. Just wanted to remind you that in the midst of transition, in the midst of trials and tribulations, and even uncertainty, that God makes all things new. That's right. It may be hard to believe, but that's the truth. Yes, some of you might be experiencing challenging and difficult times. You may feel stressed. You may feel like no one is on your side. You may feel anxious even about your path and even about your future, especially those who are preparing to graduate. But listen, I want to remind you that God is your very present help in the time of need, in the time of your trouble, sadness, and even in your joy, and even in the right now. Why? Because 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 17 through 21 says this: if anyone is in Christ, he or she is a new creation. The old has gone and the new has come. So guess what? As you walk forward, keep knowing that God will renew you and that God will bless you and that God will see you through. And also, we want to encourage you to join us on Sunday, February 6th in the Brown Hall Chapel Auditorium as we have Worship on the Yard, partnered with 5th Episcopal District of the Young Adult Ministry of the CME Church, as well as the Miles College family. We look forward to seeing you in person and or on our live stream platforms, Facebook and YouTube. God bless you till we meet again.
Nobody great.